Today's the 21st day of Kislev, the 22nd of December. And a suggestion that since this year the first night of Hanukkah is also the night of what they call Christmas.
What is it, Thursday night or Wednesday?
Today's 22nd, right, and the 23rd of December. So Wednesday night is the first night of Hanukkah, and it also happens to be Christmas.
Christmas Eve, so to
Yeah,
speak?
because it's 25th,
Okay.
I think. So maybe it's already the day of. Anyway, they're very, very close.
Very close.
When I was at MIT, we were sponsored by a Jewish family, Shulkin. And they had the Etz HaShuach and they had the Hanukkah.
Tomorrow night?
Yeah.
Yeah, in Boston.
Tuesday night is
They're in Boston,
Christmas?
Newton.
Today's the 23rd.
Lovely.
Yeah, so.
24th.
Aha, okay. So it's tomorrow night. In any case, so I have a suggestion for all our friends who maybe still have some soft spot for Christmas. This year, wait one more day and light Hanukkah candles. Okay, and then
Do
And,
we do any Nidl Nach here in
Yeah.
Israel?
so there's different opinions about that.
What does Chabad do?
So Chabad does
In other words, no learning
until Chatzos. Okay. So what we saw yesterday.
Play chess.
Yeah. What we saw yesterday was, we're Persians instead. What we saw yesterday, actually on Friday, was that the Arizal's approach to this is, first of all, not to ignore the discrepancy between the sources. The one source said it's Netzach, one source said it's Hod. Right? Which side was it, the right or the left? So the Arizal, this is where his genius comes in. He says, no source is incorrect. My whole approach is to unify the sources together. And that, in the time of the Ramak, Rav Moses Cordovero, whose explanation we saw in chapter 1, that was impossible. He didn't have the bird's eye view to be able to see a model that would somehow make it possible for it to be both the left and the right eye. That he couldn't do. And the Arizal, he's deeper in that sense. He sees a wider range of possibilities. But to do that, he has to invent something called achol b'achol and panim b'panim. He has to invent, which is not really an invention, he just has to take it from somewhere else, and say there's actually two partsufim here, there's two players here, not the angel and Jacob, but rather in Jacob himself, there are two aspects, the masculine side and the feminine side, and they are either face-to-face or back-to-back. In either case, what is left for one is right for the other. And so when the angel or the man touches his thigh, hurts his thigh, he hurts both sides, the left and the right. But because of that, he now has to explain to us this whole thing of face-to-face and back-to-back. And he also has to explain to us what does it mean that Jacob has a masculine and a feminine side. What is that all about? And we said this all goes back to Adam. What I neglected to mention is that the Chazal already say, the Talmud already says, Shufrei de Yaakov ki shufrei de Adam Rishon. That the face of Jacob is like the face of Adam. When they say that, they don't mean to say that they had pictures of both, and they said, they look very similar, they must have been father and son. What they mean to say is that Jacob's relationship with his wives is like the relationship that Adam had with Eve. We said that Adam's relationship with Eve is that, like we said, they start out as back-to-back, and then they're separated, and they eventually are supposed to come face-to-face. How do we see that in Jacob? We see that his relationship with his wives is very turbulent. It's not simple. Even though he immediately falls in love with Rachel, he first marries Leah, and at least she doesn't think that he loves her. He never voices anything in this direction or that direction. And we see that his relationship with Rachel is very precarious. It's not so easy because she doesn't have children, and she feels that he owes her for this. And she says to him, "If you don't give me any children, then I don't want to live." So he says, he lashes out at her and says, "Am I instead of Hashem? Can I take God's role and do things for you?" So this whole situation that the sages see in the lives of Adam and Eve and Jacob and his wives, so this is translated in Kabbalah and the Arizal into this relationship that Yaakov has with his wives. You don't see this with Sarah. You don't see this with Avram and Sarah. Avram and Sarah are usually considered to be the elder statesmen. So they're like the Chochmah and Bina, or Ima Ilah and Abba. There's all kinds of, but that's usually where they're placed. And Yitzchak and Rivka, they also have a very solid relationship. So they're considered to be an extension of the wisdom and understanding. But Jacob and his wives, it's the whole emotional realm, which is very turbulent, which is changing all the time. And so there, the Kabbalists see a completely different relationship, and that's what the Arizal is getting at here.
There was a certain problem with Hagar when she
It's a little bit of a problem, right?
was brought up Satan.
Right, but it's not her. It's not. So he has the most solid relationship is obviously Isaac and Rivka, and they're considered to be the ultimate couple, the best couple. In any case, so what we get here is to see the depth of the Arizal's thinking. That when he takes a sugya, he takes an issue, and he delves into it, he goes much, much deeper than what the early Kabbalists did. So the early Kabbalists, so what is this like? So we have this other model that I thought is very pertinent here. It's called Nekudas Sfira Partzuf, that most people, when they start learning Kabbalah, so what do they see? They see the Sfiros as, the Sfirot as like singular, or they're standing separately one from another. They're not even a sfira yet. Really, they're just a glimmer of an idea. They have a glimmer of an idea. And what do they usually say? They say, this is a revelation, a certain revelation of godliness in the world. And they have a very, very point-like definition of what it is. They have one thing that they latch onto. It takes quite a while until they realize that a sfira is something much, much more complex. And we did a lot of that when we talked about davening, right? We did a lot of that, and what the sfira is and why it's needed and so on. And then finally, as you mature more and more and you begin to learn more, then you come to the concept that sfirot are just building blocks. And in the end, what you're looking at is partzufim. And here what we're going to be looking at is partzufim. Partzufim are already models. So Yaakov and his wives, they're models. There's the masculine and the feminine, Zah and Nukva. These are already like whole creations.
I don't understand the connection between Sfirot and
Partzufim. So a sfira, again, is like usually when you learn early Kabbalah, so there's no talk of partzufim. They don't talk about the partzufim at all. They just talk about sfirot. And so you think that, sfira is very complex because it also has, it has inter-inclusion with other aspects of the other sfirot. It has a relationship with other sfirot. And so you begin to have a more complex understanding of it. But it's not really alive yet. The whole understanding of Kabbalah really comes alive only with the Arizal. When you begin to have a partzuf, an actual partzuf, you have these personas. I once said the translation of partzuf is actually persona. So you get personas. That's why the Bible is alive, because you have personas, you have people.
See, rather than a concept.
Right, it's not a concept anymore.
Okay.
It becomes almost like this takes on a life of its own.
Yeah. I got
And
it.
until you get there, you can't really begin to appreciate the complexity. It's like
Of the Sfirot.
of the Torah, of what the Zohar is saying,
Or
of
even
the
Sfirot.
and the Sfirot themselves.
Backwards.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Right, the Sfirot are just building blocks. They're
I see what
it's
you're
like
saying.
saying that you're looking at people as cells, but you don't see the whole person.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. Yeah.
So the whole problem with learning is that you can't jump stages. You really do have to take it step by step, and each step has a certain growth to it. And then when you come to the Arizal, it already becomes very complex and real. Now, the main thing is that it becomes real. You can actually talk about actual realistic events. You can talk about something that you can hold on to. It comes to life, and that's really the crux of what the Arizal does. Right? He brings it all to life in a way that makes sense. So one of the ways of looking at this, and we'll see it right now, is that the Ramak looked at this whole issue of the angel touching him as some kind of blemish in the Sfira. Something happened to Netzach. Something happened to it. And because Netzach and Hod are inter-included, so it also affected the Hod, and that's why you get that other source that says that it's the left side, not the right side. The Arizal doesn't look at it this way. What is he going to say? He's going to say that whole description is not just that it's not enough dimensions, that it's not personas, it's not alive yet. It's also not talking about anything that resembles human beings. Right? The Arizal is going to get into human beings. He's going to start talking about characters. In the Ramak, what we saw before, there wasn't so much talk about character. So let's just see the first paragraph here. However, the plain meaning of the verse, and he touched the cup of Jacob's thigh, is still not clear according to this explanation, the explanation of the Ramak, Rabbi Moses Cordovero. It implies that the verse is speaking about the souls of Israel. Huh? What is the Tzemach Tzedek talking about? Why does this verse, he touched the cup of Jacob's thigh, why does that imply that it's talking about souls? Suggesting that even in them, he, the adversary, could only affect their thighs and no more. Meaning that when he touched Jacob, he touched his lineage.
Ooh, of course.
All the souls that are going to come out of him. Where did you get that? But according to all the above explanations, this concept pertains only to the higher realms of the Sfirot. But what the Ramak explained is that it's only in the supernal world. And it's not affecting the real world down here. And we sort of ended the Ramak's explanation with me saying, so how does this affect us?
But this is the opposite.
But now he's saying, by the Arizal's explanation, this is completely different. Now we're talking about souls. And that is a general model that the Baal Shem Tov taught, which is called world, souls, and divinity. That early Kabbalah talks about worlds, the Arizal talks about souls, and Chassidus begins to talk about divinity. Now, it's not that it's talking about a different world, it's all talking about our world. But the early Kabbalah is looking at our world from the point of view of world building, like construction projects. So you have pieces, and you try to put them together. When you come to the Arizal, it's already alive. There's souls inside the world. There's something that's animating the world. It's something. It's human already. When you come to Chassidus, it becomes divine. So Chassidus is trying to insert the divine into the soul, into the world. So it's like you have 3 stages here. But why does he say it's the souls of Israel? So that's what I told you, that when you look at their version from Kehot, they don't even ask a question. How do you understand that this verse is talking about souls? Where do you get this from? Let's take a look at it. Chapter 2. And what do they say? They don't say anything. I think it's the second column. So what do they say? They say because anytime you talk about Zeir Anpin, which he didn't yet, anytime you talk about Zeir Anpin and you talk about Nukva, so you're talking about the generation of the souls of Israel. Okay, that's all very nice in Kabbalah, but that's not what the Tzemach Tzedek said. The Tzemach Tzedek said this is in the plain meaning of the verse. How is this in the plain meaning of the verse? That he's talking about souls. So, what you have to know is that the verse itself is talking about souls. How do we see that? There's 2 sayings of the sages. One says, a son is the thighs of his father. Bra kar ad abua. And there's another saying, the fetus is the thigh of his mother. So what do these 2, they tell us that the word thigh, yarech, especially when we saw that it's written in the plural form, but it's written like it's singular, so it means really both. So especially when you're talking about thighs in that sense, you're talking about progeny. You're talking about descendants. So Vayiga bekaf yerechav, which we read as yerecho, okay? Then it's talking about that he touched all his descendants. That's the plain meaning. Again, plain not in the sense that it's so plain that everybody would get this, but if you know Chazal, right away that's what comes to your mind. Okay, so that's the first thing to know, that when he says something like this, it's souls, it's because the Arizal in general is talking already about souls, and the connection to the verse is the word yarech. Okay, so we'll continue tomorrow.